All right, let's talk about something that happens millions of times a day in healthcare, but is so easy to get wrong: collecting and labeling blood specimens. It might seem basic, but if you mess this up, well, the consequences can be huge. Let's get into why. Think about that for a second. In medicine, that one single choice could be something as simple as picking the right color tube or putting a label on correctly. The stakes are just incredibly high, and today we're going to see exactly why that is. And this quote really says it all, doesn't it? This isn't just about picky lab rules. This is a massive patient safety issue. A simple slip up here can have a direct and sometimes serious impact on a real person's health. So let's break down exactly why this matters so much. Getting this first step, the collection and the labeling, perfect is basically the foundation for everything else that follows. It's the moment where accuracy truly begins. You know, when things go wrong, it's not a small deal. The lab is going to reject that specimen, no question. That means a delayed diagnosis. It also means the patient, who might already be sick and uncomfortable, has to get stuck with a needle all over again. And in the absolute worst-case scenario, these errors can lead directly to real patient harm. So the main takeaway here is precision at the start prevents this whole chain of bad events from ever happening. Okay, so now that we get the why, let's talk about the what. The best way to think about these different colored tubes is like a specialized toolkit. Every color means there's a different additive inside, and each one is designed for a very specific job. Picking the right tool is the first step to getting a reliable result. First up in our toolkit is the light blue top. This little guy is all about understanding how a patient's blood clots, which is just critical information for a whole host of medical issues. So the really important thing to know about this tube is that key consideration: it absolutely must be filled to the line. See, the additive, sodium citrate, works by preventing the blood from clotting, but for it to work right, you need a perfect 9-to-1 ratio of blood to additive. If you underfill this tube, that ratio gets thrown way off, and your coagulation test results, they're going to be completely wrong, and dangerously so. It's a perfect example of how technique is everything. All right, next up is one you'll see all the time: the red or gold top tube. This one is for any test that needs serum. And remember, serum is the liquid part of your blood that's left over after all the clotting has happened. These tubes are the real workhorses for chemistry panels. They've got a clot activator inside to speed things up. And a lot of them have this gel that, after it's spun in a centrifuge, creates a solid barrier between the blood cells and the serum. So whenever the lab needs to look at things like electrolytes, kidney function, or cholesterol, this is the tube they're reaching for. Now let's look at the green tube. This one is essential when a test needs plasma. That's the liquid part of blood before it clots. And, crucially, it's for when you need those results fast. The additive here is heparin, which is a really strong anticoagulant. So what's the big difference from the red top? Well, with this tube, you don't have to wait around for the blood to clot before you can spin it down. That makes the green tube absolutely perfect for stat or urgent tests, where getting a result quickly can make all the difference for a patient. Okay, onto another super common tube, one that is the absolute cornerstone of any hematology lab: the lavender top. This one is all about looking at the blood cells themselves. This lavender tube has an additive called EDTA, and what it does is fantastic. It preserves the shape and the structure of blood cells perfectly. That is exactly why it's the go-to tube for complete blood count, or CBC, where you need to look at red cells, white cells, and platelets. It's truly fundamental for diagnosing everything from anemia to infections. And finally, we have the gray top tube. This one has a very specific and very important job to do, and it all revolves around glucose, or blood sugar. So here's the cool thing about this tube. As soon as blood leaves the body, the cells in it just keep on using up glucose for energy. This process, called glycolysis, would make a glucose test come back falsely low. But the additive sodium fluoride is a special enzyme inhibitor. It literally stops that process in its tracks, preserving the glucose at the exact level it was when the blood was drawn. It's how we get a truly accurate blood sugar reading. Okay, so you've picked the right tube, you've performed a flawless draw, but none of it matters if you get this next part wrong. We have to talk about the non-negotiable final step, the labeling protocol. This is where human attention to detail is everything. It looks simple, right? But this process has to be followed in this exact order, every single time with no exceptions. First, you draw the blood. Then, and this is key, before you leave the patient's side, you label the tube right then and there. This eliminates any chance of a mix-up. And finally, you double-check everything using at least 2 unique patient identifiers, matching the tube to the patient's wristbands and the order form. And this really hammers home the most important points. You always label at the bedside. The biggest don't, the one that is a recipe for disaster, is pre-labeling your tubes. I get it, it seems like it might save time, but it's just so dangerous. What if you can't get the blood draw? Now you've got this labeled tube with no specimen, and it could easily get mixed up with the next patient's sample. It's a risk you can never, ever take. If you only remember one number from this whole explainer, please make it this one, 2. Using at least 2 patient identifiers, usually their full name and date of birth, or a medical record number, is the universal safety standard. It's how you confirm, without a shadow of a doubt, that you are connecting the right blood to the right person. There is zero room for error here. It's the ultimate safety check. So when you think about it, that little vial of blood is so much more than just a sample, isn't it? It's a snapshot of a person's health at a moment in time. It's a crucial chapter in their medical story. And getting the collection and labeling right from the start makes sure that the story the lab tells is accurate, that it's true, and that it leads to the best possible care. So the question we have to ask ourselves is, are we doing everything in our power to tell that story right every single time?